Okay, welcome to making pizza dough video. I have no idea how this is going to go. I started it last night. I use a scale, but I'm going to also give you volume measurements so you don't have to if you don't have a scale. So we're going to start out with 400 grams of flour and 400 grams of water, warm water, not super hot, like you don't want to stick your finger in it and have it be painful in any way, but like jacuzzi water, super warm but not painfully hot. You mix them together with just a little pinch of active dry yeast, like literally a pinch like that in the mixture. So what you're doing is you're hydrating the dough overnight. So 10, 11 o'clock at night, you mix up your 400 grams of water, 400 grams of water, or a little over 2 cups, 2¼ cups of flour, and 2¼ cups of warm water, plus that pinch of yeast. And the next morning, it looks like this. So I'm going to let it sit here on the counter for the next few hours. It's 8:45 in the morning, but we're going to let this sit out till like noon or 1 o'clock because we only need like 4 hours, 5 hours to get the dough ready for putting into the pan. So that's called Poolish, Poolish, when you prehydrate your dough in advance to get the water super absorbed into the flour, ready to make dough. Okay, so now that you've made your first batch of Poolish, the next step is to start doing stretching and folding. So I'll be doing that next. Okay, ready for the next step. What we're going to do is we're going to add more flour to the Poolish that we created. Remember, this only has just a little pinch of yeast in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add like a teaspoon or so of salt. I'm using a coarse kosher salt, but table salt's fine. About another teaspoon or so of more active dry yeast. I'm going to add a little bit of, probably half of that, of starter, just to kind of give it a little bit of a sourdough flavor, but it's not being really used for the yeast. That's totally optional. And then the amount of water that you're going to add is you're going to bring up the total water up to 60% of the total flour. So remember, we had 400 grams of flour and 400 grams of water before. If I add 300 grams of more flour, then that's 700 grams, which means 60% of 700 is 420. And I added 400 before, so I just need to add a little bit more, 20 grams more of water, so just probably 1/8 of a cup. So if you add another 1.5 cups, and you can actually watch as I mix this what the consistency is like, and you add all of this stuff together, and away we go. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to add the teaspoon of salt-ish. And the teaspoon of yeast. I'm going to add the water, and I'm not going to measure this because I've done it so many times, but just like 1/8 of a cup should be fine. And if you add a little bit too much, you're just going to force you to add a little bit more flour just to bring it down. So I'm going to add my 1.5 to 2-ish cups of flour, and then I'm going to mix it using my fancy handy dandy dough mixer. You can just use a spoon, that's fine. But as I'm adding this, you'll see that it turns very much into just a regular dough. You don't want it to be too stiff. You want it to be kind of loose like this. And then as the gluten sets up, it'll start to get a lot more smooth and silky. And then what you're eventually going to do is you're just going to keep folding it once every 30 to 60 minutes until it gets really super puffy. Lots and lots of air bubbles inside, and every time you are turning this thing over and folding it, as you watch me do it, air will be kind of squeezed out, and the dough will continue to get smoother and silkier and puffier and super light and airy. And after doing that, probably 4 or 5 times over the next 4 or 5 hours, the dough will then be ready. So I'm just gonna video doing this a couple of times. You really have to kind of go by feel. At this point, it's just incorporated. I'm gonna scrape off the sides of the bowl and get it incorporated a little bit better than this. But at this point, you're just trying to incorporate that new flour. It's food for the yeast that you just added. And it's really going to start to take off. The yeast is going to start to take off. And the dough will start to get very puffy and airy over the next couple of hours. And that's what you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to scrape the bowl down here, let it set for about an hour, and then we'll go to the next step, which is the stretching and folding. Okay, here's the bowl after I scraped it. I forgot to tell you that you want it to sit out on the counter covered. So here I've got a lid for the bowl. If you don't have a lidded bowl, then you can just put saran wrap or a plate over it. You want it to be fairly tight. You want the airspace inside around the dough to be able to get moist so that the dough doesn't dry out and doesn't form a crust on the outside. And if the air temperature of your kitchen is around 70 degrees and it's 71 in here today, then you should be fine. If it's warmer, then it'll probably take a lot less time for the dough to get puffy and airy like you want it to be. So I'm figuring with the temperature today that this will take about 4 or 5 hours. If it's, let's say it's 75 or 80 degrees in your kitchen, it might only take 2.5 hours, 3 hours. So you just kind of have to play it by ear, but you're looking for a super light and puffy dough. Okay, now we're gonna wait probably an hour, maybe hour and a half. Okay, so we're ready for the first, it's called a stretch and fold. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my scraper. You can just use your hands if you want. The scraper just gets it all off of the inside of the bowl. And I'm gonna wet it a little bit, wet my hands a little bit. And then what I'm gonna do is for this first round, I'm just going to lift it up, stretch it, and fold it over. And you can already see how the water has absorbed into the flour, and it's very dough-like, but it's kind of a little lumpy, and it's not smooth and silky like it's going to be later in a couple of hours. This is the first time, and as you stretch it like that, it starts to set up the gluten, and it'll start to resist you the more that you do this. So do this for a few minutes and get it really, really stretched out really well until the dough starts fighting you and it doesn't want to stretch. So keep folding it until it doesn't want to stretch anymore. Like that. And then here I'm going to scrape the inside of the bowl, and it's starting to stay in a big ball like that, and that's the first round. So last night spent about 5 or 7 minutes just mixing the water and the flour together. The first thing this morning was adding the more flour, the yeast, the salt, and the starter mix, and that got it ready so that the yeast is now plenty hungry and plenty of food to eat, and it's going to start massively growing here. And now that we started stretching it, the gluten's going to set up, and instead of the gases escaping from the dough, they're going to start creating bubbles on the inside, and the dough is going to start getting light and airy. So we're going to wait another 45 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, doesn't really matter, but let it set at least a half an hour, and then you can do another round of stretching and folding, and we'll see you in just a little bit. Just like last time, we're gonna wet the scraper, wet my hands, And before, we just did the stretching in the bowl, and you can continue to do that, but at some point you're going to want to put it out onto the countertop, and it needs to be dry because you want the dough to not stick to it, but not slide around. You don't want there to be flour on the counter. You don't want there to be oil or water on the counter. It is actually sticking there. So when I pull it off to the side like this and stretch it over, now you can see how it's really kind of setting up almost right away. It's starting to get smoother and finer, a little less lumps in it. So I'm gonna cut off the audio here, and we're gonna go at it. Okay, so in that last video, you saw me tucking things under, and I didn't really explain what was going on. Remember I said you don't put flour or oil or water or anything on the surface because you want the ball to stick to it. So what you do is you grab it from the sides and you pull it so that it stretches. And then when you, I gotta make my hands a little bit wetter so it doesn't stick to the ball. And then you rotate it 90 degrees and pull it again, and see how the tension of it going underneath stretches the outer surface. You want that. So I'm trying to get that outside surface nice and tight, but you don't want it to break. If it breaks, then you're gonna have to do it again. You know, wait another half an hour and then fold it and then do this again. So we're getting pretty close. It's getting lots of bubbles inside, lots of airy. Probably 2 more times, maybe another 2 hours. But that upper surface, that outer surface getting nice and smooth like that is what we're going for. Okay, we're getting close. Also, I didn't tell you that this is a double batch. If you're gonna make just a single pan pizza, you need about 1/3 of that. So I'll put it in the notes to you about how to mix up a single batch versus a double batch. Okay, we're on the last stretch and fold. I've done it twice more since I showed you last. Look how big it's getting because it's all filled with air. And I'm going to do one last one, but this is different. This one, what we're going to do is we're going to put flour out for the first time. And it's okay to do this quite a bit because you're gonna stop stickiness. But what I'm gonna do is cut out how much I need for each pan, and it's about 1/3 for the big one. I've actually made a lot of dough in this batch. Because I'm gonna also do like breadsticks. Okay, so about the size of your palm and about that thick is what you need for the big pan over here. So I think it's 10" and 8". So depending on what size pan. So I think if you were to weigh this, it'd be around 350 grams. But just go by the size of your palm and about that high. And you're creating a ball, rotating it, tucking it under, nice and smooth. And we're gonna let that rest for like 15 or 20 minutes. And then we're gonna be ready to start shaping it. But until then, you can give it a squish. All that air that you're squeezing out is gonna reform, but when you start out with this shape, it's easier to spread it out, getting it ready for the pan. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is cut out for the small pan, and that's gonna be a bit smaller. You know what, I think this one's about like the right size for the small pan. I'm gonna go a little bit bigger and make this one for the big pan. Have you noticed that we're doing things on the fly? Okay. Tucking it under, forming it into a ball. Squashing it down, make sure we got flour. So when you let it rest for 15 minutes, it's going to be a lot easier to spread out because the gluten is so elastic, it wants to just constantly shrink back in. And this piece I'm going to make like breadsticks. So I want to start getting it to rest in a longer shape, and that'll make it easier to cut those next. And we're done. So these are gonna rest for 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna turn the oven on to the hottest that you can get. So mine's 500 with the pans preheating in the oven. And then the next step in the next clip, we're going to be putting them into the pan. So these have been resting for 15 minutes. I floured them, set them off to the side, floured the area here, and now we're going to start spreading the dough out. The oven is almost up to temperature, so I'm going to put a little flour on my hands. And how you do this is you push down in the middle, but you leave the crust shape on the outside. And so you're just going to keep doing this. Now, if you go online and you go to YouTube and search for how to spread out pizza dough, I'm sure you can get some really good lessons. But I've found that doing this is fine for what we're doing, because you want the big bubbly crust irregularities, and you just don't want to push down too much in the middle to where it gets thin as you're trying to stretch this out. And all you're really doing is trying to stretch it out just enough to set inside the pan. So if you go a little bit big on it, need a little bit more flour, then it'll shrink back in very easily on its own as you put it in the pan. So that one's ready. Now I'm going to do the next one. Again, pushing it out from the middle. Leave the crust shape on the outside. And this one is a 8-inch pan, so it's supposed to be quite a bit smaller, so I'm probably really good on that. Need to move that out a little bit more. Okay, so here's the scary part, is pulling out the 500-degree pans one at a time. Super hot, be very careful. And we're going to use olive oil, actually quite a bit, a shocking amount, I think. And we're going to rub that around the pan onto the sides with a Teflon brush, just so that it coats everything evenly. It is going to start to smoke here a bit, but that's okay, because we're going to be covering it up pronto. And notice that I have all the ingredients prepped. Everything's cut. Notice how uniform the cubes of cheese are. Probably won't need to use all of those. You don't want big wads of basil, but I've got fresh basil to be put on later. Uniformly thin sliced portobello mushrooms, grilled onion and pepper, and we're going with Don Pepino pizza sauce. We've been testing a bunch and we really like that a lot. You can get it on Amazon. Okay, here we go. First pizza dough. So push it into the pan. Don't let your fingers touch the cast iron. Yeah. What was that? Oh.
That's the oven. It's preheated.
Yeah. Okay, we're now preheated. Second one. This one's going to go in a lot easier. This one will actually be really doughy. Not doughy, but it'll be a thick crust. Which is awesome. Okay, on goes the Don Pepino. Just go ahead and put a bunch on. Francie likes extra sauce.
Francie loves extra sauce.
So we put on way more than we need.
No, that's not enough.
You want more?
I want as much sauce as you will put on.
Okay, it's not going to be swimming in it.
As much sauce as you will put on is how much I want. The maximum amount that you will put on.
I'll put on that doughy areas. You don't want it to be sloppy. Okay, good enough?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. Fork here. Grilled peppers and grilled onions. A little shake of herb de Provence to ramp up the Italian kind of thing. Okay, this is where the magic of this pizza kicks in. Mixed cheese, Monterey Jack. You can use anything you want. I just wouldn't use a sharp cheddar, even though this has cheddar in it. But you sprinkle it along the edges. This is not the main cheese. This is just for the crust. And you make sure that you get it some that's touching the cast iron, because it's going to immediately start melting down into the crack and down around the crust and form this amazing cheesy crust that is like to die for. But the main cheese is going to be the mozzarella that we put on. Okay. So I'll continue putting on the ingredients here, pop it in the oven, and we'll video it as they come out.
Okay.
Here's the big unveiling. Taking it out of the oven, turning it off, turning the timer off. Oh, baby. Oh, look at that. Okay. So, the next step, which we don't need to put in video, is using the handy dandy pizza cutter.
All right. Are you done then?
Yep. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.